Okay, so let's start. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
So, there is a teaching by Pema Chodron on how to be unconditionally friendly towards ourselves, explaining a bit about Maitri. And in Hindi, I think the word Mitra derived from the same root. So, let us listen to this one and then we can meditate over it.
We can stay with it. Many of us, maybe all of us, find it extremely difficult to just stay with the moment. And maybe all of us, to greater and lesser degrees, dissociate continually. But mindfulness is a tool for bringing us back to the actual sort of tactile taste, smell, quality, feel of the present moment, whether that's emotion or things. So for instance, when you start finding yourself suffering at the hands of the Lord of form, reaching for things, you can flip that from being crippling or something that weakens you to actually really completely contacting that experience, that taste, that touch, that smell, that feeling. Because usually what we do is we reach for these things because they help us to numb out and leave. So if we even use those things to be in full contact with what's going on, this is what you can trust. And in the process of getting used to mindfulness or being right here, you can expect shaky, tender, queasy, fearful feelings to arise. And so Maitri becomes very important. In the Shambhala teachings, they have a beautiful image, which I love very much, which is to place the fearful mind in the cradle of loving kindness. And that's the notion of Maitri, loving kindness. To place this fearful mind in the cradle of Maitri. And there's another wonderful Shambhala teaching which says that if you don't get to know the nature of fear, then you'll never know fearlessness. This is a good one to write down in your notebooks, to remember. Because we are so uncomfortable with fear, we're so uncomfortable with discomfort, that we just want to get away from it. Therefore, that's a definition of ego. It's just trying to get away from direct experience. And that's what weakens us. That what never adds up to inner strength, and it never adds up to some kind of unshakable trust. It just makes us more scared and more uptight. And saddest of all, it isolates us and cuts us off from each other. Whereas the real healing will only happen from our interconnectedness with each other, realizing our interconnectedness with each other. But this tendency to try to get away, this deep, deep desire to want to get away, cuts us off from other people and from our own emotions and thoughts. So we place this fearful mind, which is known by everybody in the species from beginningless time, we place it in the cradle of Maitri. Now I want to say about Maitri, first of all, I think it's interesting to know that Trungpa Rinpoche taught Maitri in a way which is rather unusual. He's not the only person in the world that taught it this way, but it's not the typical way of teaching Maitri. Maitri is usually taught as developing the wish for others to be happy. Therefore we have the chant, may all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. And that line refers to Maitri. So usually when Maitri is taught, it's this wish for others to be happy. And this is a very important part of Maitri. But the way that Trungpa Rinpoche taught, his definition of Maitri was unlimited, unconditional friendliness towards oneself. which then naturally radiates out to others. So I'd like to describe a little bit of how this works. First of all, when we think of Maitri, usually we think of qualities like gentleness and compassion, kindness, tender-heartedness, giving ourselves a break, non-judgmental attitude. But one should realize that a very, very important part of Maitri is honesty. The journey of development of Maitri is very much away from self-deception, away from this tendency to try to avoid what's going on. And it begins with making friends with what's going on in your own mind, with your own emotions, in your own body. Developing a truly unconditional friendliness towards your own mind, your own emotions, your own body. Generally speaking, when we look closely at anything, our judgments go along with it. And this is particularly true of when we look closely at ourselves. I remember very clearly when I was starting out on the path of meditation and the Buddhist teachings that I was always hearing about Maitri, and it was described as making friends with oneself. And I remember one day just raising my hand. It was like year 5 or 4.5 or something. I was about that far into it, just raising my hand and saying, I don't get it. The more I sit and get to know myself, the more I hate myself, because I see all this stuff. So it doesn't seem to me that it's adding up to friendliness. And that was sort of the beginning of me beginning to understand that part of this was seeing all of this really clearly, that clearly, to the point of actually beginning to long for it to lift, to not want anymore to harm myself in that way. So that a great longing could arise, a great yearning could arise to no longer want to be imprisoned by my own habits. But along with that, there had to be an enormous quality of compassion for oneself. And from that, I heard the teachings that we should realize that anything we see about ourselves is our introduction to realizing what other people are also feeling and thinking and seeing. To realizing the habits that every being is captured by, and beginning to have good heart towards humanity as one finds it in oneself, and then beginning to give other people a break as you start to give yourself a break. So this honesty is really important, and I think often people would like to just skip over it and just be sweet to themselves, which could easily fall into the 3 lords of materialism. In other words, in the name of Maitri, you just get real addicted to things and ideas and states of mind, because all of them make you feel so good, and that's Maitri, right? Feeling good. But actually, Maitri is just feeling whatever you feel with a compassionate attitude and with extreme honesty. As the days of your life go on, moving closer and closer to a direct experience of yourself.
So this is what I wanted to share, where she was sharing that to be honest with whatever is going on within ourselves and not to try to push our experiences away, whether it's anger, jealousy, all the negative stuff that comes up. So not to be, as she shared, not to just try to be sweet all the time, and not to others, inward feeling, and try to hide what's going on, but to be very honest, very sincere and direct in our experience. And that is being true friends with ourselves, that I know what is going on in me and I'm letting it uncover and unfold. So let's for 5 minutes we'll just sit with ourselves If possible, we'll bring again and again our attention back to breath. I'll let you know when 5 minutes are done. Also, when we sit here like this with breath, many a times unease comes up and some insecurity, fear, something, or the other comes up. So also just utilizing what she shared. So letting it be, which means to stay put with the breath and letting the experience unfold, appear and disappear. That's also being friendly with the experience. So we are neither trying to push the experience away, nor trying to judge it, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience that is emerging up. Just staying put with the experience, holding the experience's hand with the help of breath. And also to notice when we are sitting like this, mind is like a, in Diwali we used to have these rockets. Nowadays, we don't burst crackers, but earlier there were these rockets where many times the rocket would just, owing to the fact that it has so much of energy within, once it is burnt, lit up, so push, 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 it just goes here, there, 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 it doesn't know which direction to go. So our usual mind is like that. It goes into the past, then it goes to future, and then begins to worry about the present. And then the hard time that it has is to be in the here and now. That is where it just, one has to train, one has to tame. So when we see our mind hopping from here to there, first of all, getting entertained by the activity of the mind, and then also to notice this, that whether it's future or past, or whether it's even worries about the present, they're nothing but our dreams. There is no reality in it. And when we know that it's that is dream, this is dream, this is dream, this is dream, it helps us to the back bring back the mind in the present moment with the help of breath, the only place where things can happen newly and unfold in a new way. So just the last 1 minute, and stay with the breath. So for those of us who have joined later, we were listening to Pema Chodron's explanation on Maitri, where she was sharing what it is to be honest and true friends to ourselves. Maybe you can catch up with the recording for that. So I'll just in alignment with this, I have something more which also is very nice, and that it's a question asked by a person: what to do, how to be in present moment when the present feels so unbearable. So there could be something challenging going on, some intense overwhelm, mental or emotional. So how to then be in the present moment when it's unbearable. So we'll listen to that.
How do I stay in the present moment when it feels unbearable? Because in Plum Village, we always say that let us not get caught in the past and the future. Let us go back to the present moment. And this is a question about that. How can I stay in the present moment when the present moment feels unbearable? That's a good question. Anyone who knows the practice of mindfulness knows that you have to go home to the present moment. When you go home to the present moment, you can find two kinds of situation. The first kind of situation is there are so many conditions of happiness available in the here and the now. When you breathe in and bring your mind home to your body, you are established in the present moment. And you notice there are so many refreshing and healing elements available in the present moment. There's also many conditions of happiness available in the present moment. And with that awareness to generate a feeling of joy and happiness is very easy. That you can do in order to nourish yourself with joy and happiness. So that is the first thing you encounter when you go back to the present moment. The second situation is that when you go back to the present moment, you might encounter a feeling of pain, a feeling of a painful emotion that is in you. In fact, a painful feeling, a painful emotion manifests from time to time. But when it begins to manifest, we don't like to be there, so we try to run away, pretending that it's not there. So no one is there in order to take care of the painful feeling, the painful emotion. So going back to the present moment here is no longer to recognize the elements of joy and happiness, but to have a chance to take care of the pain in ourselves and to transform it. So even if the present moment is unbearable, to go back to that moment is the only chance for us to do something in order to calm it down and to transform it. Most of people don't do that because they're afraid that when they come home to themselves and touch the pain inside, they will be overwhelmed by the suffering. And that is why their practice is to run away. Imagine something about the future to forget. Go back to the past to forget. But the past and the future, they are like images, not reality. Only the present moment is real. Many people try to cover up the pain inside, not only by going back to the past or running to the future, imagine that there will be some hope, some end of suffering in the future, but that cannot last long.
So I think what we just heard previously, what Pema Chodron was saying, that in reality, Maitri is being honest, being nakedly honest with whatever experience is happening, not to cover it up, not to, put layers on it, but to be directly with it. And here he was sharing how to be with painful stuff that arises from time to time in everyone's life. And I think I liked the fact that he shared that when we go into the past or when we go to the future, these are nothing but images, and we are not actually nakedly with the raw experience of pain that is emerging. So again and again, he stresses that what it is to be with the direct pain that is arising right now, and that is to be mindful of whatever is arising. I am aware that it is there, and to be in touch with the breath, which he also stresses again and again, which helps us to bring us back to the present moment. So I want to share one little experience which maybe may shed light upon, to elaborate on what it is to be in direct touch. So I was walking on a ground, and uh, there was something which was bothering, and thoughts about that thing was coming and going and coming and going. And I started listening to this particular one by Thich Nhat Hanh. And the moment I connected with my breath, of course there was, if I can say, there was pain in that moment. But the moment I connected with, stayed with my breath, fully, suddenly I realized that my feet were touching soft grass, and it was like a lawn on which I was walking. And Thich Nhat Hanh shared that in the present moment we can see that there are many other conditions available for our joy and happiness. And the moment I felt that touch on my feet of that cool grass, and little flowers there, very soft bed, and suddenly my eyes also went above to the uh, chirps of the birds that were there. And suddenly the uh, you know as if I connected with more things, more conditions for happiness, because many a times our mind is fixated that if that doesn't get well, if this doesn't get well, we just remain very unhappy and always thinking about that particular thing to get fixed, and that never get fixed. Somehow things have their own way. And he was sharing that if we connect with the present moment, then we see that we have many other conditions for happiness available to us. And in that simplicity of the moment, touching the grass, just looking at the birds, things were okay. Things were not that difficult. I did not have to make myself suffer that much. I could be with whatever pain was there in the present moment, and then it was okay. I could be with the pain. I could be friends with the pain. I don't have to run away and pretend that it is not there, but I also do not have to fuel it by thinking about it. I think this is where it helps a lot, that we don't have to fuel our suffering by thinking about it. We can be with the emotional or mental pain right here and breathing through the pain, being friends with the pain, looking at it directly. So that really helps a lot, to go through life. So I'll pause at this moment if there are any reflections anyone wants to share. There is also teachings of many people have talked about breath, and they say that whenever something is arising in us which pulls our attention, it rides on the breath. So the mind rides on the breath. So if there is something negative arising like anger or jealousy, in order to clear that, in order to make way for it, like let it appear, fully unfold and disappear, and not to fuel it, propagate it by excessively thinking about it, we have to connect with the wind of whatever is arising. And wind means the energy, the breath. So if I become conscious that now I'm feeling insecure, in that moment a consciousness arises that I am aware that I am insecure. If in that moment, if I can stay with the physical sensation of insecurity and stay with the breath, just consciously stay with the breath and stay with the physical sensation of insecurity, then it helps us to let it emerge and let it disappear, just like a cloud appears and disappears. And I am connecting with the emptiness through the breath. So for anger, for jealousy, for hate, for past hurt, whenever past hurt arises, because it will arise by a thought mostly, or a feeling, intense feeling, to not to go into the thinking domain or into the past and future, which are just images, but to stay with the direct experience of whatever is arising in the body, the physical sensation of it, by staying put with the breath, letting it clear, letting it emerge, as much as it wants to go up, and then as we stay with the breath, we let it pass also, and we are connected with the emptiness or the sky of awareness or mindfulness. We never left that place. And there are many, many past impressions that keep on coming because we don't know how many lifetimes we have lived. Something of this life comes and something of maybe other life comes up as an intense, strong feeling. And we have to make space for it. We have to make uh, friends with it, that, okay, I am here and you can be here for as long as you like. I'm here, and then, whatever you decide. And that we can do by being mindful of it, being aware of it arising, and being staying put with the breath. Because staying put with the breath is our connection with the present moment, which we don't want to lose. It's very easy to get entangled in the forest of past and future, but there we never get any resolutions. And true healing happens in the present moment when I'm available. So, like this, we can chart our way through all the experiences 24/7. So many things are happening again and again if we can take a stand in the present moment and use the breath to let things arise and let things dissolve in space. So they are arising from space and then they dissolve back in space. And what remains is space. What was is space. So connecting with that space within is, I think, very healing, with which the help of breath that we take, connecting with the space. And also that experience that I think Badalji was sharing that other day, this story of Raja Janak, when he has this um, dream about, he's begging, he's hungry and he's not getting food, and then an eagle comes and even takes away that little food that was there, and then he wakes up and then he's a king. Now he's wondering whether that is true or this is true. So that also is very powerful, because what really is true? Is the past true of which I am thinking? Is the future true of which I am thinking? Is the dream that I see from time to time true? And then Ashtavakra says, neither that is true nor this is true. Consciousness with which you see is true. So the mindfulness, which is a connecting thread in our all experiences, past, future, dream, waking state, sleep, this mindfulness, the awareness that is there, which never sleeps, that never sleeps. If we can connect with that mindfulness, then we don't give ourselves to much way to be lost in the forest of past, future, dreams. All is dream. And we have the possibility to just narrow down our, completely come back with our full energy to the present moment, in which we can deal with things one by one.
In fact, when we're in the getting disturbed, and in the family life, we had been trying to do the jobs to satisfy others. So similarly, inside me, all those the greed, anger, and all this. So we were never recognizing them, and so from minus we have to come to zero, and after zero, then probably we have to go to the positive side. But once we come towards zero itself, we get a lot of happiness. Like at least some burden has gone from the head or mind, and then we get encouraged. Any situation comes, that becomes very easy actually. Where earlier it was very difficult, and we're not finding the way out, how to get it solved. But as if now automatically some thought process comes which cools down immediately. Yes, the anger and this and that, which surfaces from the old habits, but uh, we find some way out also. So that is one thing. It's with the practice, with the constant practice, this development takes place on the positive side.
Yes, definitely.
This
Yes.
I've been observing in myself actually. This is an
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah.
I have to I have to think, I have to love me, my old habits and this and that. So then if you analyze sitting alone and in a quiet place,
Mm.
then we come to know that yes, we are moving on the positive path.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. You know, what you shared reminded me of, I was reading something and it shared that when we have, yeah, let me just find it. I think it's, yeah, this one. So when we are working with the breath, when we are clinging to the breath, and holding on to it as our anchor, then, for example, they were talking about clearing anger. It is coming. I am aware that anger is coming. Past impressions are there, some past habits are there, and it takes time before it ball comes to complete halt. So he says, when you release the breath, it is possible to feel that something has moved, something has cleared, and something has opened up. When anger dissolves, a new space is available. I think Badalji was hinting at this emptiness, when old habits had occupied this space. So now we are becoming more and more conscious of old habits and not following their dictates. So there is an empty space that is arising, or unmasked, not even arising, but is because it was always there. So he says that a new space becomes available since the old patterns now are not ruling. As you become familiar with this empty space, you will discover that the space is not simply empty of anger, but has also a quality of warmth, what we can say compassion, no? Warmth. What produces the warmth is actually the union of that space and your awareness. So I love this, that now awareness is on that empty space. I'm aware of the space. So, this union of empty space and awareness creates a warmth. I found it very beautiful. Becoming aware of the space in which anger has dissolved creates a new space for love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And all these positive qualities will come. So, when the garbage is cleared again and again, the garbage is cleared. Now something new has space to happen in presence of awareness. So I found this really beautiful when he shared that what produces the warmth is actually the union of that space with our awareness. That this friendliness that is there in the being, that I am available, I'm here. It's a beautiful uh, experience to have within one's being, because usually we are looking outwardly in people and relationships that somebody should give me warmth. But if we are able to experience having this direct experience of warmth with the emptiness, it's something very nice, which we can always create for ourselves anywhere. Yeah. And the same thing we can kind of spill out in our other relationships. So if I am friendly with my own self and my own inner space, this quality of warmth can be spill out. We can spill out this relationship, this in our other relationships, and free them of the baggage of expectations. Okay, so any last reflections, any last comments, anyone? All right. So, wishing everyone a good day and a good night, I guess, at Jasmine's place. And yeah, may we be more and more mindful throughout our day and night. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank